here. Everybody's knocking off early because there's kinds of stuff going on tomorrow. So they usually knock off around noon. And so I was saying goodbye to everybody. And then here, let me get up and grab it here. Hold on. That sounds weird.
Where's he going?
Oh, right here. And then I guess they have a thing where on Fridays they actually have a beer tap in here.
Oh.
And they all have a beer. And so they poured me one. Now I don't drink, but I don't want to be rude. So I said thank you, and I took it, but I'm just going to leave it here.
You do pour it in the trash?
It smells gross.
Gross.
It smells like, it smells like beer. Brenden, ready?
He's ready.
All right. Joining us right now, Sactown Sports Kings Insider. Brenden Nunes joins us. Brenden, what's up?
What's going on, guys?
Nothing.
Nothing at all around the Kings.
No, nothing at all. Very slow week, obviously. I think craziest thing I've heard is a beer tap in a studio.
Well, let's start out sports talk radio style. Bobby Marks, former GM, joined us earlier and said if he had to bet, the Sacramento Kings would still have De'Aaron Fox on after the trade deadline. Brenden, why is he wrong?
I think from the front office perspective, it does probably make sense to try and do a deal right now. You'd imagine that De'Aaron Fox having this half season remaining as well as another year on his deal after this, that would increase the value. I don't know that necessarily I think Bobby is wrong, obviously. But I think that it's never an easy thing to iron out when you're trading a star player of this caliber like the Kings are entertaining with De'Aaron here. So I think that it wouldn't be for a lack of trying. And if anything, with him very pointedly preferring San Antonio, the cards are kind of in their table, it feels like, because they have the assets to make a fair deal. But they could decide that it feels best for them to wait till this offseason and see what competing offers are there and what they really have to feel like from their perspective they need to give up, because they're in a situation where, from my understanding, they're going to have cap space in 2026 when De'Aaron Fox is a free agent anyways. So if they really wanted to be patient and make this whole thing difficult, excuse me, then they could. So I think that it won't be for a lack of trying, but it's a little complicated to try and iron out one of these deals within a week.
Brenden, if we do take the Spurs as it is the primary target for De'Aaron. If we go down that road and the Kings and San Antonio are talking, is there something there you personally see that you go, yeah, I've worked the trade machine a little bit. I think this is something that could benefit the Kings. Anything that you like?
Yeah, I mean, I think that the sort of polarizing piece, I guess, is going to be Stephon Castle, just being one of those super high picks recently, sort of top of the rookie ladder right now. Does a lot of intriguing things on both ends of the floor. Like, I've seen a bunch of Kings fans hoping pie in the sky that it's a Paul George SGA scenario, and I think that's about as big of an outlier as it gets. But getting a really high-end lottery talent like that, I think finding a key piece that ideally in my mind is up and coming would be key in this. And I think Castle is that. I'm a little unsure on if I feel like they'd be able to get Castle or if San Antonio would even need to include him. I'm also a big Devin Vassell fan. I think that he's pretty talented and sort of fits a lot of the wing skills that the Kings need. And then those Atlanta picks that the Spurs own with some light protections and some swaps in there as well, from going back to even the DeJounte Murray trade, who's obviously not even on Atlanta anymore. But those are some valuable picks. There's also that 2031 swap that the Kings sent out in the DeMar DeRozan deal that they could get back. So I think that, it comes down to, are we talking Stephon Castle or are we talking Devin Vassell, and how much of this draft capital is being willing to put on the table.
Brenden Nunes joins us. Florida State's Vassell, by the way. Just let's get that straight. And what is it about Vassell that you like? I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm not pushing back. He's 24 years old, 68 games last year, 38 the year before, 71 and 62 before, 29 so far this year. Career averages, if you will. Let me just pull them up for those not incredibly familiar with him. Career averages of 14 points, 3.7 boards, 2.6 assists, shooting 44% from the field, 37 from beyond the arc, 80 from the line. But that doesn't tell the whole story on Devin, does it, Brenden?
No, actually, I mean, he was coveted very much so as a 3-and-D player coming out of Florida State with a little bit of off-the-dribble potential, and I think that has become actualized. He is one of the more new-age players that still likes the mid-range more than some other guys, and probably more than I personally would prefer, but I think he knocks him down at a good rate. He shoots well. He's got about I want to say it's about a 6'10" wingspan. With good height as well and length obviously there. So I think he's a disruptive defender, and sure 6'5" isn't like, the necessarily ideal forward wing that this Kings team seems to have been searching for forever. But I think that similarly to Devin Carter, who, I know hasn't been playing great recently, still really early in his career, but like plays up based just because of his wingspan, length, and IQ there. So I think I like how he would fit next to Domantas Sabonis. And, ideally I would like how he fits next to De'Aaron Fox as well in this conversation. But I think that's going to be part of the funny thing here is that you're going to get the guys that you've always wanted next to Fox in the deal where you eventually ship them off.
Yeah, and that's the part that's, look, the trade deadline's already weird for everybody. Everybody's on edge. I'm sure Herter would be, Lyles, guys that are expiring and have been talked about before. And now when you put Fox in there, it kind of impacts the entire team, Brenden. So while they could be working on something related in a big move with Fox, if that doesn't happen, they also still have other needs and other things that could be traded. So it's going to be an interesting time. Let's just kind of put Fox to the side. What other things should they be working on or could they be working on as targets to still try to make, this version of the Kings better?
Yeah, it becomes a weird conversation, right? Does it affect how they want to approach this deadline, knowing that if it's not by this deadline within the 6 days here, that it's this offseason that we're probably moving on from De'Aaron Fox? I think that they still probably try to make the trades that they would have made even if De'Aaron was still around. I think that John Collins trade has been kind of sitting there for a little while. It wouldn't surprise me to see them revisit that. The Cam Johnson, I'm always mixing up the two, conversation. I think they may be getting priced out a little bit, but probably still entertain that. When it comes down to it, I expect the team to still want to remain competitive no matter what direction they end up taking with De'Aaron Fox, even if he's on another roster. I think it's more of a retooling rather than a full reset. So I think the reality is you still need wings and forwards. And if De'Aaron especially is not moved on from by this deadline, then you definitely need to still make another move. So I think it puts a hold on, maybe how long it will take us to reach the point of that move. Like I said, I think the John Collins thing has been sitting there for a little while, and I'd imagine they're busy fielding a bunch of calls about De'Aaron. So I think it could delay how long it takes, but I would think that we're still talking about, some of the trades that were being entertained before all this De'Aaron stuff went down as well.
If he's not moved, do you think he'll still play the rest of the year? The fans will still cheer the rest of the year? I mean, can they, if he's not moved at this deadline, can they go back to, hey, I want to see other people. Never mind, let's sleep in the same bed.
I hope so. I think that from De'Aaron's perspective, I would definitely expect him to play. He has plenty of excuses to be able to sit, even like in that Philadelphia game or the upcoming Orlando one. He's got these finger issues going on. If he really wanted, he could get surgery and end his season, and I don't think that's the direction that he would go. I think he wants to be out there and play basketball. And I think kind of the sad aspect of all this is I think De'Aaron genuinely always wanted it to be Sacramento and kind of got to the point where he lost faith in the front office to put him in a position where he's going to be able to compete through this next contract of his. It's going to take him through his prime, and he's an uber athletic point guard, and sometimes those guys fall off fairly quickly. I think he's trying to position himself to be a little bit more Mike Conley, but it's an unpredictable league when it comes to how long some of these guys are going to last, especially players in the mold of De'Aaron. So I think that I would hope that the city would still embrace him throughout the time, because I feel like he's embraced the city and kind of been made to look like the bad guy in all this. Not to say that he's handling it perfectly, but I think that he always wanted it to work, and I would definitely imagine him playing the year out in Sacramento if a deal didn't get done here in the next 6 days.
Brenden, last one for me at least. What's your best answer as to why Domantas Sabonis didn't hear his name yesterday as an All-Star reserve?
I would probably say just everything going on with the Kings. I think being in the 10th seed right now, sitting at 11 and 12 for a decent stretch of the year, obviously before they end up moved on from Mike Brown there. It's really that 7-game win streak, or 11 of 15 under Christie, which is towards the end of the voting there, where they probably looked at their best. And Domas's numbers look good, but I think the reality of coaches as well is that you're rewarding winning a lot. His numbers look better than Şengün, but the Rockets are the 2 seed and they don't have any representation. And as annoying as that may be, and it's not as black and white of, is he a better player than this guy, as I think some people might wish the All-Star game was. Şengün in the 2 seed, you got Jaren Jackson in the 3 seed. I still would call it a snub. I think that Domas deserved to make it, having, 42 double-doubles in 44 games or something ridiculous like that, leading the league in rebounding, putting up 20+. He's second in the league in three-point percentage. I think he deserved to make it, but I can see the logic a little bit of wanting to reward winning, especially when Sacramento was, flirting with even being in play-in contention there. But I was surprised he did not make it.
When we talk again, Brenden, that will be February 6th, I think. 7th. Will we be talking about the trade that happened with De'Aaron Fox, or will we be recapping Kings Orlando and how De'Aaron Fox did for the Kings?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, first half of the day yesterday, and the day prior, I was pretty convinced that a deal was going to get done. And I think that is slowly waned a little bit to where I'm leaning a little bit more on Bobby's side of, I'm kind of thinking the deal won't get done because it's dependent on San Antonio wanting to play ball. And maybe they can entertain offers of other teams that are understanding that this is a rental for De'Aaron Fox if he's not going to be willing to commit long term. But I've heard he doesn't have that much interest in Miami, in going back home to Houston or things like that. I've heard that in his mind, it really is San Antonio or nothing. And again, I think that makes it a little bit tough from the Kings' perspective on how much San Antonio is willing to play ball right now, because they're not a team that necessarily feels like they need to rush. And unless I have the wrong read on their scenario, but I feel like they have every reason to be patient here, and that makes it a little tough. So I think that they're going to keep having conversations, and it kind of feels like a coin flip to me right now, but I would slightly lean towards him not getting moved currently.
We're not going to have Chris Paul on this team, are we?
I don't think so. I think so. I think that's part of the weird complication from San Antonio's perspective, is that they really like Chris Paul and the mentorship that he's provided to the team this year, and he expires after this year. And from their perspective, it might make sense to let Chris Paul play out the rest of this year rather than, having to deal with both. Because I don't think that he would be part of a deal, but there's a weird world where it kind of makes sense from the Kings' perspective in my mind, since I do expect them to try and remain competitive, but I don't think that's the direction we go in. I think we're talking, some combination, 2 of the 3 of Stephon Castle, Devin Vassell, and Keldon Johnson as the main pieces here.
All right, we got a break, but you just made me think of one last thing. Isn't there a scenario we should maybe pay attention to, that the Spurs are probably very aware of De'Aaron Fox's injuries as well? And you mentioned they like Chris Paul. They make a deal with the Kings with the preordained decision with Rich Paul and De'Aaron Fox that they trade for De'Aaron. He immediately gets surgery to repair those fingers. The Spurs, in effect, don't tank, but they've just lost a decent part of their team, and they have gotten nothing in return because Fox is on the shelf for the rest of the year. He signs an extension, and they let Chris Paul finish out the year. I mean, we're not really considering that, but from a long-term point of view, and that's why they'd make this trade, that probably makes a ton of sense.
That does make sense. Yeah, definitely a direction that they could go in. They also, if they retain their own pick throughout the deal, they're sitting at 10th right now and could look to get another young piece to sort of add to this core. I've also heard whispers about them trying to potentially try and get another guy alongside De'Aaron Fox. Like maybe it's a Brandon Ingram, and they really try to just fully build out a young core right now. So I think that is an avenue that does make sense for the Spurs. And it's another one of those complications that adds to this conversation. I think it's always tough when a player is very much trying to push themselves towards one spot, and we've seen it work out in different ways with Donovan Mitchell not ending up on the Knicks and Damian Lillard not ending up on the Miami Heat. But I think that this one's a little bit different with how many assets the Spurs have. I think they do covet De'Aaron, and they have the pieces to get a deal done. It's not him asking to go somewhere that makes no sense from Sacramento's perspective either. So yeah, I think the scenario that you laid out does make sense for the Spurs. And like I said, I expect them to have a lot of conversations over this next week and really try to work towards a deal. It's just about, is San Antonio going to want to pull the trigger right now or be a little bit more patient? But I think that scenario you laid out definitely does make a lot of sense from their perspective.
That's our Sactown Sports Kings insider. Brenden Nunes joins us each and every Friday to give us the lowdown on what's going on. Brenden, appreciate you. Thank you so much.
Yep, thanks for having me, guys.
Thank you.
All right. That's Brenden Nunes.